Hi, welcome everybody. This is a workshop I've been working on for several months now. After we started doing some genetic testing here in the office to help us figure out what's the best way for us to approach nutrition, exercise, based on specific genetics, I decided it'd be good to do a workshop on it as well. And it's one of those things where, kind of like everything else, the more you learn about something, the more you realize that sometimes some holes just go way too deep and you don't want to go into it. But I want to touch base on genetics because it's something that is kind of on the forefront of a lot of our minds, because we got the 23andMe stuff that's going on and the DNA Fit and all these other organizations that are out there doing genetic testing. And it's really come a long way in what they're trying to find and what they're trying to do with it. I'm going to play a quick video that just kind of go over just real, in a nutshell, some basics of genetics, and then we'll jump into things. All right, so here we go.
You are part of a diverse array of organisms that inhabit the biosphere on Earth. Bacteria, plants, animals, and you are all carbon and water-based cellular forms with complex organization and heritable genetic information. So, are you curious what makes you, you? Your genes make you, you. Genes make up the set of instructions that are given to you from your mother and your father. You are you because of your genes. Now you know more about this microscopic entity that makes us all the same, but grants you with distinct differences that make you unique.
Pretty simple, right? That was actually for you, Katie. I know Katie loves this stuff, the science behind everything. We got to get the chemistry in there. We got to get everything else that's going on. But it talked in there about the genome, and this was actually the Human Genome Project was a project that was started in 1990, and it took about 13 years for them to complete to where they feel like they've got a pretty good map of our genes, so they know about us. They know what's going on, and their goal with this was hopefully to be able to take and utilize it towards improving our health, to find the reason why we have different diseases, these disease problems, tendencies towards things, and so forth. What they've got, the way it's kind of evolved right now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with CRISPR, but CRISPR is actually going in and doing some genetic modification into humans so that we can try to manipulate the way that their DNA is expressing life and health. And so they've got all kinds of different seminars and symposiums where they're working on this. One of the challenges that they've run into is the ethics behind it. Is this playing God? Is this taking things too far? It hasn't been tested technically. I think that there's probably some places that are doing it, kind of under the table without letting people know. But what's interesting is that this was completed in 2003. In the mid-1990s, so shortly after they started the Human Genome Project, there was another study that was done. And I think this one is really interesting when it ties into genetics. It was the Okinawa Way. And what they did is they took a look at Okinawans. At that time, the Okinawa population had the highest percentage of people living over 100 of anywhere in the world. And what they found is when they looked at these people, they weren't just wasting away in nursing homes. These were people that were living. They were active. They were social. They were some of them still working. And as they looked at them, they started going, well, there's really a unique thing that's going on here, especially compared to the Western world. They demonstrated a few signs of aging, 80% less likely to get heart disease, 25% less likely to get breast and prostate cancer, 50% lower risk of colon cancer, less likely than Americans to get dementia. On average, they spent 97% of their lives free from any disabilities. That's quite a contrast from what life in the United States looks like right now, right? When you take a look at 86% of us will have heart disease and or cancer. We're not dying from one disease anymore. We're dying from multiple diseases. You take a look at Tiger Woods, who said he would pay anything to get his dad back. And his dad died with cancer, heart disease, and diabetes. And that's kind of the trend. We've got people that are collecting diseases. And so you take a look at it, is there something that's going on in here? Is it genetics? Are they genetically superior to us for some reason that they have less than 10% of their population that gets heart disease and cancer, and we look at 86%? Well, here's what they did was they started looking into their genetics, and they have the same genetic predisposition to those diseases that we do. But the disposition to diseases wasn't being active. So here's what's interesting is with all the information they just showed us about the genes, they said there's junk genes, they said that there's only a small percent that actually is manifesting what's going on, is that we have a lot of genes that are actually inside our human genome that aren't doing a whole lot. They're just kind of waiting there. They're dictating certain things if they're activated. But if they're not activated, they're pretty much dormant. So what it comes down to is that it's not necessarily a difference in genetics, it's a difference in the expression of their genetics. So here's what Time Magazine came out with. This was 2010, when they started understanding about a field called epigenetics. And that means above genetics or beyond genetics. This is some really cool research that came out. It actually started by a guy back in the 80s who wrote a book called The Biology of Belief. His name is Bruce Lipton. And he was a biologist. He started looking at things, and he actually took genetic material and put it into different cultures. The same genetic material, he pulled actually genetic material out of the nucleus of the cell and put it into different cultures, and depending upon the environment in that culture, some of it turned into bone tissue, some of it turned into skin tissue, some of it turned into other types of tissue. And so we realized that it wasn't necessarily the DNA part of it, is different strands of that gene that actually cause it to express differently in a different environment. So again, the same strand put into a different environment, it showed up totally different. And he started presenting this to different people, and they thought he was wacky because it just didn't make sense with anything they understood. Now things have kind of come full circle, and this guy is considered, a genius, brilliant for what he came up with. What they found is that you can turn on and turn off the expression of different genes. So that means that you can have, like the Okinawans, a predisposition, or you can have the gene that would predispose you to cancer, but it's turned off. So very small percentage of their population has it. What's interesting, now you start looking at the younger generation in Okinawa who's embraced Western lifestyles, and they've got heart disease, cancer, diabetes, all these things are on the rise. Because guess what? You can turn on certain genes at the same time, right? What we found is your genetic destiny, it can be changed. And this is really exciting because what they found is that, say for instance, that you're a young adult and you've got a genetic predisposition to heart disease because your parents had heart disease, your grandparents had heart disease, that's what you've been handed down. If you take and you embrace some changes that can actually turn that switch off, and then you conceive and have children, that's what the children are going to inherit, is that gene sequence turned off. So you can kind of rewrite the history of your kids. You can change the next chapter of their lives. You can kind of get rid of generational curses, so to speak, when it comes to family lines and health issues. The thing that's really exciting to me about this is that we don't have to be victims of our genes. Especially when I look at, I've shared this a lot of times, is that 3 out of 4 of my grandparents had Alzheimer's. Guess what? If I'm just looking at the human genome and predisposition, what that looks like, guess what? I'm going to start feeling like that's what I'm going to end up with. It's easy to fall into that and kind of go, yeah, it's written. The code has been written and I'm destined to go there. But we don't have to, because we can turn on and turn off certain genes. We can rewrite our future and we can affect our kids' future. That's what's really exciting about this, is that we don't have to be victims to our genes anymore. So looking at epigenetics, which is really what we're going to talk about tonight, where do we start with that? Well, it really starts with what's called SNPs. SNPs are these little switches turned off and on. It actually determines whether a gene is going to be expressed or not. It stands for single nucleotide polymorphism. It basically means that things have been changed. Remember in the video I talked about the bases. So you've got the guanine, the adenine, the taurine, whatever all these are. And if you actually switch these around, it's going to change the way that gene expresses things. It's called a SNP, and it becomes activated towards certain characteristics. And here's what's interesting about this, is that lifestyle is what causes these changes to take place. And if you think about the way that we're created, the way that we're designed, is we're designed to survive, right? We're designed to thrive. And what we found is that if we have a lifestyle that puts us at risk, these SNPs will actually occur as a protective mechanism. They actually serve a purpose. They may cause, less than positive symptoms as a result, but they're there to serve a purpose for survival. And so if we have a lifestyle, for instance, that is detrimental to our health, and it creates this snipping effect in our genes, it's there to try to buy us some time so we can survive. If we clean up our lifestyle, we can kind of flip that switch back the other direction, so a lot of the negative circumstances that come with that genetic expression go away. So again, it's just the brilliance of how we're created, the complexity of how we work. Testing actually looks at how these SNPs affect cholesterol levels. Well, I was talking to a gal this morning, and she was going in for testing because she has this genetic predisposition to high cholesterol. And I high-fived her and said, good, guess what? All the research that's been coming out for the last 30 years from medical research shows that people with the highest levels of cholesterol live the longest. High five, way to go. Don't let them talk you into lowering that. Right? It actually serves benefits. Understanding what goes on with it. Obesity index. Interestingly enough, the genetic testing that both me and Dr. Cody did showed that we have certain tendencies towards obesity. So fortunately, our lifestyle hasn't activated those, but I would imagine that it probably could if we chose to do that. Our BMR resting metabolic rate, we look at fast twitch muscle activity. One of the tests that we did actually told us whether we'd be better off doing high intensity interval type exercise or slower, more aerobic type exercise, strength conditioning or other types, based upon the type of fast twitch activity we have going on. This was real interesting, is the vitamin metabolism and methylation. Methylation actually has to do, we'll talk about this a little bit more, over 200 different cellular functions in your body. And if your body doesn't methylate well, it can set you up for all kinds of different issues. Both Dr. Cody and I have the SNP for poor methylation. His was mild, mine was severe. I had severe health issues as a child, he didn't. So my guess is that there was already an epigenetic change taking place before he was conceived, so he didn't get it was as bad of a SNP involvement as I did when I was born. It can be tied to addictive behavior. So there's lots of different things that these genes can be affecting, and we're going to break those down in details. But here's what's important to understand about this. And this is really important for people who get genetic testing done, is that it only shows your susceptibility. So again, it's not necessarily a code that says this is what you're going to have, but it says you're maybe more susceptible to this. So because my body metabolizes alcohol and caffeine faster, it actually increases my chances or likelihood of having addictive behaviors. That's good to know, don't you think? So maybe I should approach utilizing those things with a little bit of caution. So it shows susceptibility, so it gives us some ideas on how to deal with things. But again, it doesn't tell us everything. So this is one of my results. This is actually what's called the MTHFR gene. It's really, really popular in medical science right now because it has a lot of different problems that are related to it. And you'll see in here severe impaired ability to convert folate. That's the way that mine showed up. And so we take a look at what happens when you've got this gene and it's activated, is that it causes all of these things. These are all potential issues that go on. Some of the people that we have that come in here that have been tested and find that they have a MTHFR SNP, they're the people that have chronic Lyme disease, Epstein-Barr issues, which I have Epstein-Barr. It's not manifesting, it's not showing up as being sick. But there's lots of different things that can tie into this. You'll see in here, it affects our ability to concentrate, focus, mood, so autism and autism spectrum disorders, ADD, ADHD, Down syndrome, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. So these genes can affect everything. So we're going to find out that, guess what? Just because we have that SNP doesn't mean that this is our destiny. It's a susceptibility. It's good to know this. By knowing this, guess what? That means I have to pay even more attention to my lifestyle, because that's how I affect how this manifests. So this is important to know because with some of the testing that's going on, they're looking to see what your genetic predisposition to certain diseases are. Anybody familiar with the BRCA1 gene? Yeah, so this is actually the susceptibility to breast cancer. And science tells us that it's an 86% increased risk of breast cancer if you have this particular SNP. That's actually manipulated data because it comes out to less than 14%. And if we take a look at the latest research on this, in fact, the reason I put this up here is that Angelina tested positive for this. And she had both breasts removed prophylactically. She had both breasts removed because she feared that this genetic SNP was going to cause her to have breast cancer, so she did that so that she wouldn't get it. The Angelina effect is also this, that when Angelina and Brad named their kids, the popularity of the names that they chose for their kids took off. And so when you see somebody who has some influence like this, it can change the way that we respond to information. I've had several women since this came out that have come in and told me that they have this BRCA gene and asked me if I thought they should have prophylactic mastectomies done. And here's the research, and this is, I told them no before I saw this, but I think this is really good. Breast cancer survival not affected by faulty BRCA genes. Guess why? The gene shows susceptibility. It doesn't show destiny. It doesn't say this is your lot. It says, hey, you might have an increased risk. Let's pay attention to specific things so that we don't activate that. Does that make sense? So as I was getting into this, I realized that I could go as deep as I wanted in this, and I do not want to become a geneticist. So I figured out, okay, who's the leading geneticist out there? Who's the leading guy in the field right now and working with epigenetics? And it happens to be a guy by the name of Dr. Ben Lynch. He's a naturopath, and he's been working on epigenetics for several years now. And the guy he's brilliant. He's come up with lots and lots of things. There's a great book out there that's a bestseller now called Dirty Genes. And if you have more interest in this and you want to do some digging into it, I would suggest picking it up and reading it. He actually has some really good information and some good protocols for helping to get things back on track. So here's what we need to recognize, is that genes will express themselves in response to our environment. Okay, remember we talked about Bruce Lipton and how he took different strands of the genetic material and put it into different environments, different petri dishes, and it turned into different things. Our environment determines what our genes do. Our diet will affect what's expressed in our genetics. Exercise will do that, mindset does that, neural pathways will do that. Does that sound familiar to anybody who's been coming in here for a while? This is the reason why in here, even though both Dr. Cody and I trained as chiropractors, is that this isn't a chiropractic office. This is a holistic health office. This is a lifestyle education office. This is an equip you so that you can actually affect your genetics. Because what it comes down to over and over and over again with everything that I look into, when it comes to health, it's our lifestyle. Our lifestyle is the key thing that determines what kind of health we get to experience and express. That's why we do this stuff. It comes back to lifestyle. So let's go through and figure out what happens if our genes are acting dirty. Right? And here's what's important to come from Dr. Ben Lynch's book is he says, you can have all kinds of genetic testing done, and you can find that you've got all these SNPs, like myself and like Dr. Cody had, that indicate that we're susceptible to certain things, but they're not manifesting. But we may not have a SNP, and we manifest with that problem. Because our lifestyle is in such a place where it's actually activating that, even though it's not set up for that switch to be flipped in that direction. So this is where the testing becomes kind of a problem, is again, because it's a code, and because it shows susceptibility, it's not something where it's etched in stone. So you can not have the SNP and be manifesting problems. You can have the SNP and not. So it comes down to is, are your genes actually acting like they're involved, or are they acting not? Are they clean, functioning properly, or are they dirty? So here's what happens when they do. It can affect brain and mood issues, causing things like we talked about, ADD, ADHD, anxiety, brain fog, depression, fatigue, insomnia, sleep disorders, irritability. So if we have genetic issues going on, guess what? It can affect the way that we think. It can affect our moods. It can affect our relationships. How about this? Memory issues. Right now they're showing that 80% of us, by the time we're 80, are going to have dementia issues going on. Why is this? You know, in Okinawa, the older people there had very little memory issues going on. It's because our genes are dirty. Our lifestyle is actually setting us up for these kinds of issues. How about cancer? Right? We talked about the BRCA, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, stomach cancer. These things are actually tied to poor genetic function, which goes back to lifestyle. Cardiovascular issues, atherosclerosis, which is hardening of the arteries, plaquing that goes on, heart disease, hypertension, stroke, high triglycerides, stuff that goes on with cardiac function. So we can actually, those are indications that our genetics are not working the way they should. How about female hormone issues? This is epidemic as well. This has become bigger and bigger and bigger because of stress. Stress on our lifestyle actually creates switches in our genetics. It'll cause those SNPs, menopause difficulties, menstrual issues, menstrual migraines, PMS, fertility, pregnancy issues. This is epidemic now as well. Lots and lots of people are having difficulties with pregnancy these days. Risks of birth defects. You guys hear about the folic acid, why we need folic acid, and so that we're not getting spina bifida, these types of things going on. Guess what? If you have the genetic SNP that Dr. Cody and I have, and you give somebody folic acid, you're going to mess them up. You're going to create bigger problems for them because of that genetic profile that's going on. Gland and organ issues. Again, this is stuff that's huge. Fatty liver right now is actually an epidemic that's taking place, and it's almost rivaling diabetes in how fast it's growing. It has to do with stress and hormone imbalance. Liver dysfunction, gallstones, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. You guys familiar with that? You know anybody that has SIBO? This ties to all kinds of digestive dysfunction. You'll have leaky gut issues. It sets us up for all kinds of autoimmune diseases. Thyroid dysfunction, lots and lots of stuff that goes on with hormones. Metabolic issues, food cravings. Anybody do the craving quiz that we have? I tell you what, this overlaps completely with our genetic expression. Food cravings are really, really big. Obesity and weight gain takes place. All of these things go on. So let's do this. It's time for a pop. Does everybody have a piece of paper? What we're going to do is we're actually going to go through, and instead of doing a genetic test, we're going to do a genetic quiz. So there's 7 key genetic expressions that we want to take a look at to find out how things are working. And what you're going to do is you're just going to take a look at these suggestions on here and make a note. So for instance, for MTHFR, how many of those actually do you deal with? Okay, so go through and write down how many you're dealing with of those. We're going to go through 7 different ones of these. So, and we'll kind of tally up the score toward the end. Does everybody have their number? Yeah. Anybody not have their number yet? Anybody not what I'm talking about? Okay. So for instance, if you have those things, if that applies to you, just imagine putting a checkbox in there and then coming back and counting how many checkboxes you check. Okay. Everybody done with MTHFR? Okay. DAO. This is really tied into people with allergy issues and so forth too. So again, kind of grade yourself. We're looking for 0 to 5 on this. Anybody not done with these? Now, what's interesting is some of these, depending upon how they're activated, they'll either slow down the genetic expression or they'll speed up the genetic expression. I can tell by how some of you guys were nodding off earlier that the number 2 on there wasn't a problem for you. Everybody got this one? All right, that's if the COMT is slow. Here's the fast version of that. Again, if you took the craving quiz, you'll see that there are a lot of similar type of questions on here. Because our craving is going to be affected by our genetic expression that's going on. Okay, everybody done with this one?
No.
No?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm trying to keep it to me and not everybody else.
Yeah, this is you. This is all about you. You're not testing your entire family yet.
Yeah.
Okay. You ready?
Okay.
All right. All right. Are we done with this one? Move on. All right, everybody done here? All right. So everybody gets at least one of this. This is one of those, interestingly enough, that we talked about how these SNPs can actually work to our benefit in certain circumstances. The second one in there, I'm sensitive to chemicals. This is the person that has this SNP because of some kind of toxicity issues. They tend to be more sensitive to that, so they tend to stay away from those things. They're almost like the canary in a mine. If you remember, back in the old days, miners would take canaries down into the mine shafts with them because if there was any kind of noxious gas in there, the canary was more sensitive to it. They would fall off the perch, and then the miners knew it was time to hightail it out of the mine shaft. People that have this, they're going to be more sensitive to that, so they can tell when there's a risk for issues maybe before other people would. So it's kind of interesting how, again, some of these can work for a benefit even though they're not necessarily pleasant. Are we done with this one? Okay, everybody got this one? All right. All right, how about this? Everybody done? Okay, now we're going to score these, okay? So here's what you're looking at for each one of those. You can go back and kind of tally up what this looks like for you. If you got 0 points, that's great. That means that gene is clean. It's not creating kind of issues right now. 1 point actually means it's doing pretty well. 2 points means you probably have some stuff that's going on, and it wouldn't be a bad idea to kind of take a look at doing an evaluation at the different components that will affect that, which again comes back to lifestyle and make some modifications there. If you got 3 to 5, that means that it's time to actually reassess lifestyle stuff. Maybe do a detox or a cleanse. Yeah.
So that's in every category.
That's for each one of those, yeah. So it's not 3 to 5 total. That's going to be 3 per gene. Yeah. So that, yeah, there you go. That gives you an idea of which one of those you have a particular issue with. There's a little easier breathing now, right? Did anybody get 3 to 5 in any of those categories? Yeah, it's fairly common. You start looking at that and you kind of go, even if we do fairly well, it shows that we can, if we have a strong susceptibility to it, it's worth doing some stuff to clean that up. So, if we have genes that are acting dirty, guess what? We can change that. We can change the expression that's going on because, again, it's just susceptibility to it. It's not necessarily something that we're going to be doing. Genes express themselves in response to what? You guys remember this? Yeah. If we go through all these, you guys remember all of these, right? Bottom line, it comes down to lifestyle. And this becomes really important because when we take a look at, again, the Okinawans versus us, how are we doing in this country when it comes to health? Yeah, we're near the bottom. We're actually, of all the industrialized countries, we're dead last. But we're 39th in the world overall in health. We're 41st in life expectancy at birth. I mean, it's just really coming dismally. And it's interesting is that even the World Health Organization recognizes that our healthcare system doesn't have the answers for it. And 90% of all disease prevalence today are not treatable with orthodox medical procedures. Any idea why that is? Well, all of the stuff that we just went through, where we're looking at how things can be affecting our brain and cognitive function, cardiovascular risk, risk for cancer, metabolic issues, they're all related to what?
Where we live, what we do.
Yeah, genes, where we live, what we do, lifestyle, right? Because the genes are going to be affected by the lifestyle. So it comes back to the diseases that are prevalent today, guess what they're called? They're called lifestyle diseases. Cancer, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, arthritis, all of these are called lifestyle diseases. And what's interesting is a lot of people argue, oh, cancer can't be a lifestyle disease, it's genetic. Well, less than 4% of cancers have a genetic connection strong enough they can't figure out why it doesn't show up in other people. The other 90+% has been shown to be set off by lifestyle, just like the BRCA. And so guess what? We're not victims of our genes, even though our parents and grandparents had disease. It comes back, it's our lifestyle that affects things. But what do we do more in this country than any other country on the planet to deal with our health? Yeah. We're the most drug-dependent country on the planet. We take a look at the opioid crisis, and guess what? We take 80+% of all the opioid pain medication on the planet here in this country. And now they're saying it's causing 60,000 deaths a year. 60,000 deaths a year. It's crazy. So, bottom line is, some brilliant guy years ago said you can never medicate away lifestyle diseases. Right? We can keep trying, we can keep trying, we can keep trying. And medicine does a great job for first aid. It does a great job for managing symptoms, but it doesn't do anything for health. In fact, it does things for health, it does things in a negative way. Because every medication we take has what?
Side effects.
It has side effects. And while we may need them for a short period of time, guess what? If we get in here and start creating epigenetic changes, changing the expression of our genes, guess what? Eventually, we're not going to need anything. Huh? You said, yeah, I thought you said lettuce. I'm like, no, we need more lettuce. So let's start cleaning house. How do we go about, if we've got some of these things going on, what do we do? What are some practical strategies, some lifestyle stuff that we can do? Well, how about this? Let's clean up our environment. Filter drinking, cooking, and bathing water. This becomes really critical because guess what? They're actually showing right now, I don't remember, it was a study that came out of California, and California is now assessing the fluoridation of water because fluoridation is linked to neurological disease and bone disease. It actually causes bone deformity even though we're taking it to try to make our bones stronger. We need to filter our water. Because of the chlorine that's in our tap water, just taking a 10-minute shower, you're going to absorb as much chlorine as you would from drinking several glasses of water. and chlorine is carcinogenic. So good filtration is essential for any of the water that we're going to be consuming on a regular basis. Avoid non-stick and aluminum cookware. This is critical as well. Remember the canary story I was telling you about? Well, when we used to have birds, they told us, make sure you don't have non-stick cookware in the house because of the toxic chemicals that are off-gassed when you cook with that thing. It'll kill a bird. But because it doesn't kill us instantly, they tell us to go ahead and use it. DuPont, who came up with Teflon years ago, they were told by 1996, I believe, that they had to have that off the market. They apparently paid off whoever enforces that so that they didn't have to do that. So we still have all of that toxic cookware available to us. The aluminum cookware, that off-gases. Aluminum has been linked to Alzheimer's and other diseases, neurological diseases. So we have to avoid those. Avoid use of household and garden chemicals. Glyphosate, all the stuff that's going on with that. And now that Bayer and Monsanto have merged, it's probably going to get worse. You know, it's one of the biggest conglomerates in the world dealing with chemicals that we're going to be exposed to on a regular basis. Avoid all plastic containers for your food and water. This is all of them, even if they say that they're EPA free. Just want to get rid of plastics. These have damaging effects to your hormones, create hormone imbalances with this. And avoid excess EMFs. Anybody familiar with EMF poisoning? Electromagnetic fields. This is crazy, the research that's coming out on that. We've got, 5G that's now coming out? You're familiar with 5G, David?
Oh, that's the whole industry, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So 5G, I just saw some studies that have come out on that, and they're showing that kids are bleeding after they've been exposed to this stuff because of the damage that these EMFs cause. You know, they've shown that holding a cell phone up here actually irradiates your brain and increases your risk of brain cancer. All kinds of different cancers that are increasing as a result of this. When you walk through the airport and you do that scanner thing, you're getting blasted with this stuff that stays inside your cells. Causes all kinds of damage that goes on with that. And while we can't avoid this completely, we have to find ways to minimize it. If you guys have Wi-Fi in your house, turn it off at night. Turn it off when you're not using it. I know a lot of my colleagues, they've gotten rid of all Wi-Fi. Everything is wired in, and they turn as much stuff off at nighttime when they go to bed as they can. I've got a thing on my phone that actually filters and blocks the EMFs so that it's not sitting there just blasting me when I do it. I know guys, Dr. Mercola, for instance, that actually, whenever he makes a phone call, his phone is on a selfie stick, and he's got it sitting out there with these air tube headsets that he uses. And you might think, wow, that's a little extreme. This guy has actually looked at more research regarding health than just about anybody else out there that I know. He might know something that I don't. And so he goes to other extremes that I don't go to. So avoid these things to whatever degree you can. This is kind of the world we live in. But when you think about our bodies being electrical in nature, and you start throwing all kinds of random electricity at us, it can create some problems. One of the things you can actually do to help to mitigate this, spend time barefoot, out in the damp grass, out in the dirt, walk along the beach whenever you get a chance. The more we can ground ourselves to the earth, the better off we are. That helps to kind of reset things.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
With all this EMF, do you think there's a link to that and depression and anxiety that's happening with these kids? Because I see so many people just surrounded by it, and it's kind of a scary thing.
We had a gal that came in years ago, and she was having all kinds of chronic health issues. She had a bunch of amalgam fillings in her mouth that would have the mercury in them, so she had those removed by the guy down in Colorado Springs that got kicked out of the ADA because he talked about how toxic things were. He came up with the protocols for the most effective detoxification from mercury. So she did everything the right way. She went through that. She continued to have health issues. We put her through all kinds of work in here, and she cleaned up her diet. She started doing the exercise. She was doing everything. She saw some improvements, but she was still struggling. And she lived right next to a power plant, whatever they are, one of those relay stations. And so she got a little EMF device and was walking through her house, and everything was just pegged inside her house. They sold their house. She moved away. She started getting better and healing. So it has a huge effect on it. So when we take a look at this, toxicity is destroying us. You look at, we talked about aluminum cookware. Guess what we're putting into our kids every time we get a vaccine? Aluminum, mercury, formaldehyde, we're putting toxins into our body, and then we're exposing ourselves to EMFs, and then we got all these other things going on. Is it any wonder that in the 80s we had 1 out of 10,000 kids with autism? Now it's 1 out of 153.
What about the cast iron cookware? It seems to me that you'd be getting a lot of iron from your.
Yeah, you're not going to get near as much off-gassing on that. It's actually a pretty clean way to go. Cast iron is a pretty good way to go. So, how about this? Now let's get into the diet part of it. This is really as simple as diet gets right there. Make a better choice, right? Eat real organic food. That's the key. You know, I've talked in my workshops in the past that there's food by God and there's food by man. It's that simple. If you eat stuff that's real, it's going to be a whole lot better for you than stuff that's not. If you want to be more alive than dead, eat food that's more alive than dead. Actually, coming from the Okinawans, another thing they learned is that their people typically would stop eating when they felt 80% full. Here's another thing that they noticed about that too, is because it's such a social society, they actually ate their food while they were communicating with people. They didn't have their phones in front of them. They were taking their time. They weren't eating in their car. They were chewing their food. And so by taking time and actually enjoying food, making it something that we can actually make an experience out of, chewing things up, taking time, we allow the hormones that speak to the satiety center in our brain to actually engage so that it tells us that we're filling up. When we eat fast, we actually get filled up before our brain gets the message. And so just slowing down and eating, making eating an experience, right? It should be a fellowship time, something that we can do. So it really comes back to creating a lifestyle. It says, hey, let's enjoy food together. How about exercise? You know, it's getting the right amount of exercise for your body. We take a look at a lot of issues that go on, and stress can create problems for all these things. So if your body is run down and you continue to push yourself, you're actually going to cause genetic expression based upon stress response. It's going to shut things down. So you need to do things according to the way that your body is designed to work and what works best for it. Get the right amount of exercise when you're rested, not to the point of exhaustion. We're going to be doing some assessments here coming soon. We've actually got some devices that measure your heart rate variability coming in. And they will help us to identify when somebody is at a place where they need to rest and when they're ready to perform. We've done it with a lot of elite athletes that we work with, and it shows them when they've overtrained or prevents them from overtraining. So it says, hey, you know what? I've actually got an app on my phone that's based upon heart rate variability, and after a workout I can click the button if I've been wearing my heart rate monitor, and it'll tell me I need 36 hours of rest before my next workout, or 12 hours of rest before my next workout, depending upon how my body is handling it. So there's ways that we can do that. We're going to be testing that here in the office coming up real soon as we get our new equipment coming in. This is important. Exercise to enhance your sleep, not to interfere with it. A lot of people will exercise in the evening and they find that it kind of gets them amped up and it gets going and they have a hard time falling asleep. So with that, we need to take and make sure that we're doing it at a time where it actually makes us feel tired so we do sleep better. This is really the exciting part, the mindset. In all of the reading that I've done, it said that the way that you can change your genetic expression faster than any other is through your mindset. The thoughts that you have. Caroline Leaf, I talk a lot about her. She says the thought you're thinking right now is affecting the 75 to 100 trillion cells in your brain and your body at quantum speeds. You can change things that quick with your mindset. So we need to spend time daily focusing on gratitude. In our stress hormones in your health, we talked about how gratitude actually raises your growth hormone, which is an anti-aging hormone, lowers cortisol, which is a stress hormone. Whenever we're lowering stress, we're giving those genes a chance to turn off so that they aren't manifesting disease. Speak positive affirmation. You know, when we speak something, especially when we speak it audibly so that we can hear it, the vibration actually changes the resonation inside of our cells. It changes the vibration inside of our cells. And so it changes the expression. So it's good to think things, but it becomes even more powerful when we speak them. Check your state. Anybody know what I'm talking about when I say check your state?
Your state of mind.
State of mind, state of physiology. This is just one of those things where what I found is that a lot of us, we live in a really busy time, right? Nobody comes in here and says, gosh, I got too much time on my hands. I'm looking for something. We're all busy. We got a lot going on. But there's a difference between being busy and being chased by a bear. You agree? However, when we live in a state of stress, our body is living as if it were being chased by a bear, even though it's not. So that busyness often translates into a habit of being stressed. That makes sense? Guess what? You can be busy and you can be calm. You can be busy and you can be relaxed. But what happens is, and I've shared this story a lot of times, that when I was teaching Dr. Cody to drive when he was 15 and we were in a parking lot doing like 3 miles an hour with nobody else in the parking lot, and he was doing fine. I was holding on to the door handle, both feet pressed against the floor, and I was like white knuckling the dash. And I was holding my breath and clenching my jaw. And I checked my state. And my state was, holy cow, I'm bracing for impact. But it wasn't going to happen. So I took a deep breath, shook things out, relaxed. 5 minutes later, I was back in that state again. And I started checking my state, and I realized that I was in a stress habit. That was where I would go to. I would just find myself there when there was no reason. And so I would set a timer to go off every half hour. And when it went off, I would check my state. How's my jaw tension? Am I breathing? And I kind of just, if I noticed any tension at all, I would look around, say, yep, there's no bear here. I can relax. And what we know is that anxiety and stress, the opposite of that is gratitude. So I would always kind of wrap up my checking my state with some kind of an affirmation of gratitude. Whew. Man, that was beautiful today, wasn't it? Great sunshine, whatever I could find to be thankful for. And I noticed 2 years later when I was teaching my daughter to drive, we were in the same parking lot driving along, and I was checking my state, and it was fine. Because we broke the habit. This is how lifestyle affects our health. It affects our genetic expression, affects our hormone expression, affects everything about us. So we have to take captive our thoughts. We have to take and pay attention to what's going on so that we don't live in a place of being stressed out. We can live in a place of peace, even though we may be busy. I kind of call it the ninja type thing, right? Is a ninja going to be better at fighting if he's like this, or if he's like this? Right? It's being free. It's flowing. It's living from that place of flow and not from tension. So mindset is huge. Okay, we talked a little bit about monitoring HRV. HRV is a tool that actually tells us, are we in fight or flight, or are we in parasympathetic where we're resting and recovering and recuperating? And again, we'll be able to monitor that ourselves on a regular basis. We'll have another workshop on that coming up. And then the neural pathways. This becomes a really critical thing because guess what? When I would change my mindset, it would change me that quick. But guess where I would go back to? My habit of stress because of neural pathways. Neural pathways are basically nerves that are programmed to go a certain direction and carry a message a certain way whenever they're stimulated that way. And so we have to actually train them differently. That's why when somebody comes in here, we find that they've got subluxations going on and their spine is growing wrong. We can adjust them and we can see some changes in their posture. We can see changes in their action. We can see changes right away. But these neural pathways have been established for their postural muscles, for their neurological memory, and it takes them back to where they were. So we have to retrain that. So it comes back to making sure you're getting adjusted consistently. This is really critical. Do your home care exercises daily. What I've recognized is that by doing the home care daily, we're undoing the stress, undoing the damage of postural stress that goes on because of the way that we work, because of different habits we have, other things that go on all the time. Most of us, our livelihood involves us doing this. Whether we're at a computer, whether we're cooking, whether we're cleaning, whether we're adjusting, whatever we're doing, this is where we are. So if we're not doing something every day to open that back up and undo that and retrain that, we end up becoming the person that starts to get more and more bent over. Doing them daily. Increased balance and agility exercises. This actually stimulates the nerve receptors in your body quicker than anything. My dad's a brain injury survivor, and for Christmas I gave him an agility ladder and some agility balance balls. And he's been doing like an hour of exercise every day to work on his stimulation from all the nerve receptors back to his brain to activate brain cognitive function. We haven't seen a whole lot of that, but we've seen some really good balance stuff, which is important too, because guess what? The number one cause of people dying in the hospital, older people dying in the hospital, is balance issues, falling down, breaking a hip, getting pneumonia, and dying in the hospital. So this can help with all of that. Change your routines periodically. Change the way you drive to work. Change other stuff. Change habits that you have. Focus on others instead of yourself. This is a big one, because our mind, our thoughts affect these neural pathways, and so much time we get caught up in our own stuff, and we're focused on it right here. We pay attention to it, and we don't even see what's going on around us. But as soon as we can kind of turn our attention out in here, it's not like this goes away, but we start seeing other stuff, and now it frees the body up to start taking and responding to those things, and it reduces the stress effect that goes on. One of the best things we can do for ourselves is actually focus on other people.
Volunteering.
Yeah, volunteering. Yeah. Not making it about yourself. So, we've talked a lot about the lifestyle stuff. For those of you who've been with us for a long time, we've talked about the 5 essentials in the past. We've tried to simplify it because 5 is a lot for people to remember. They'd always get stuck on 2 or 3 or 4. So we've got the ABCs. And I want you to remember these and keep these in mind. So when people say, what is the lifestyle stuff? What's it all about? It starts with alignment. This is aligning your spine and your lifestyle so that you can experience the miraculous. You guys realize that we're made for miracles, right? I think it was Einstein that said that there's 2 ways you can live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. One is as though everything is a miracle. One sounds like a whole lot more fun than the other. So it's aligning our spine, taking care of that so we get the neurological function, but really getting our lifestyle so that it's in agreement with the goals that we have for life we want to live. Beliefs. So much of what has us stuck where we are limiting beliefs. Oh, I'll never do that, or I always do that, whatever that looks like. It's actually creating empowering belief systems and eliminating those negative beliefs. And then the community part of it. Research has shown over and over and over again, this is one of the reasons that the Okinawans have such great success with their older people, is they're super community focused. They're engaged with other people. Being involved in a community has powerful effects for the good and for the bad. I think it was Jim Rohn that said that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So when you come in here, one of the things we're trying to create is a community where people are going, you know what? I believe that there's more to life. I'm aligning my lifestyle so that I can go that direction, and I'm putting myself in a community of people that's going to help to nurture and support that. And so it's spending purposeful time with those people that inspire us, hold us accountable, while we do the same for them. Perfect, right? You guys remember that? So where do we go with tonight? Where do we go from here? Well, really, if you're doing all the right things, keep doing that. How long do we benefit from lifestyle choices?
All lifetime.
As long as we do them. Right? How long do you benefit from exercise? As long as you're doing it. Right? How long do you benefit from eating well? As long as you do it. It's making sure that you're consistent with that. If you fall off the wagon and you kind of get behind, you get back on. The quicker you recover, the better. What we found in going through Dr. Ben Lynch's book is that there are certain nutrients that our bodies need so that they can function properly. And even if we're eating pretty well, there's a lot of stuff that because our soils are deficient, we're depleted in minerals and other things that we may be lacking. So we've actually put together a couple different ideas. If you had, a couple of areas where you were looking at 3 to 5 on those scores, you might want to consider a detox. We've got a really effective 6-day detox program that's great. It's easy to do, it's tasty, but it's really powerful in helping your body to get a good start at detoxification. If you didn't have too many high scores, but you just want to keep your body to where it's getting the nutrients that it needs, the Active Essentials nutrient packs we have are great. They're little packets that come so that you can just take a packet in the morning, a packet in the afternoon, and it has everything you need. Full spectrum, super high quality, all food, including your fish oils and that type of stuff as well. Good way just to kind of cover the bases on supplements. If after a couple of weeks, you guys are still, those of you that tested high in certain things, you still have some concerns, set up a time with me and I will give you the second quiz to take. There's actually another quiz that gets more specific, so if we need to go after specific things, we can do that. And then we can give some specific nutritional recommendations based on that as well. Again, so if people have bigger challenges, we can help with that. For those, do we have any guests here tonight? So for those that want to come in for a health assessment, or for those of you that know people that need to get in here now based upon what you just heard, we've got our VIP passes, we got our health assessments for $77. Normally it's $287. We do the health history, the postural neurological examination, x-rays, so we can get an idea of what's going on neurologically, functionally with you. And I would encourage you to be thinking of people who need to have that done, because here's the deal, is that if we eat really, really well, we exercise, we have a great mindset, but if we've got a disconnect between our brain and our body, how well can we function and heal? It's just not going to work. We had a kid that came in last week, he could hardly walk. He was in so much pain. His mom came down from the mountains, helped him get into the office. And as we took x-rays, I showed that he had this massive bone spur in the low back. And we started talking about how that can cause pain, but how those nerves also go to things like your colon. And he stopped and he goes, wait a minute. They just diagnosed me with ulcerative colitis. And they gave me all kinds of medication. It was making me sicker and sicker. And I read up on that and I realized that it was poison and it wasn't going to make me better. He understood that it wasn't, his ulcerative colitis wasn't bad luck. It was a disconnect. His brain couldn't tell his colon how to function, and so it was shutting down. So it really becomes important if you know people who have challenges to make sure that they're getting things checked. But here's what I want to do is I want you to recognize is that your epigenetics, this is something that you can control. You can make a difference on it, right? You can rewrite your future and your children's future, which is pretty exciting. I mean, one of the greatest things that I've been able to experience as a parent is that my kids weren't sick like I was when I was a kid. That's pretty cool. It's fun when we can see those changes. It's choices we make today that determine our future. How important is today? It's the only one we got, right? This is where it makes a difference. You can't put it off. So we have to make today count. You guys know me. I like to add some kind of inspirational video talking about how do we make the most of our days. I think this guy has a pretty good answer.
If you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task, and another, and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. If I have learned anything in my time traveling the world, it is the power of hope. The power of one person, a Washington, a Lincoln, King, Mandela, and even a young girl from Pakistan, Malala. One person can change the world by giving people hope. So if you want to change the world, start each day with a task completed. Find someone to help you through life. Respect everyone. Know that life is not fair and that you will fail often. But if you take some risks, step up when the times are the toughest, face down the bullies, lift up the downtrodden, and never ever give up. If you do these things, the next generation and the generations that follow will live in a world far better than the one we have today. And what started here will indeed have changed the world for the better.
So how to change the world? You know, it starts with changing us, right? Taking ownership of what we do. You know, we talk oftentimes in here about the mission that we have here. And that when we take a look and we recognize that, you know, right now we've got 60,000 Americans that die every year from the opioid epidemic. Here's an article that talks about the #1 cause of disability worldwide is spinal pain. The annual cost of pain is $600 billion, more than heart disease and cancer combined. And we look at the suffering that's going on with people, and you guys know we're not a back pain clinic, but you also know that back pain responds to having your spine corrected, having your posture corrected, having your diet corrected. And so we're calling you guys to be missionaries for us, to change the world. You know, it starts with us changing ourselves, But it really does come down to recognize, according to an article in the American Medical Association in 2013, it said that the current medical system here in the United States is the #1 cause of death in the United States. 770,000 Americans die every year from heart disease. 784,000 Americans die every year from our medical system. And so, again, it's not that that doesn't serve a purpose at a certain time, but the bottom line is that it will never make somebody healthy. And that, as we have a truth, we really have a moral and an ethical obligation to be sharing this. So we want to recruit you guys to be thinking, how can we make a difference in our world? How can we change the world by taking some action? A couple of things that we do want to make available to you guys is that, really, who do you know? Who do you know that needs to hear the truth? Bring them to these events. Tell them, we've got a videotape, so it's going to be on YouTube. Get them to where they can watch that. But also, where can we go? We've actually got churches where we've done several of these workshops, and it's changed the culture inside that church. Katie has had us to her house a couple of times now, right? She invites all of her friends, and she sets up hors d'oeuvres and we'll come. We've got a mission to save lives. And so we need your help. Our voice is small, but by combining that, we actually have a bigger impact. I'm not a good singer, but we can start singing together, and it actually is going to keep us all going. Because really, what it's all about is that there's far more to life than just trying to manage your symptoms. It's about becoming fully alive. And this starts by changing the way that you embrace life and pursue it. We've got another workshop coming up next month, so be thinking about who you want to come to this. Isn't that an amazing looking family right there? It's a good topic. We're going to be talking about raising healthy families. It's going to be July 18th. We're getting ready to get back into the school season by that time. There's going to be lots of stuff out there about get your kids ready for school, get these vaccines, do these types of things. We're going to be addressing all of those things. Some of the stuff that's not so popular to talk about, but everything that truly is affecting our health. So anybody that that wants to raise healthier families, and this is families of all ages, write down July 18th. All right? Then we want to make sure that we're staying up to speed with what you guys are interested in. We're going to be doing a workshop on heart rate variability, HRV. How is your nerve system working? Is it healing, or is it in a place of fight or flight? But if there's other topics that you would like us to address, let us know. Okay, you guys have little survey forms, I think, that were handed out to you. Go ahead and fill those out. We want your feedback, good, bad, ugly, whatever it looks like, but also give us some ideas on where we can go with education, stuff that your friends, your family might be interested in as well. All right? With that said, God bless you guys. Thanks for being here. I love and appreciate you. And go and have a great evening.